Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. We're reading from Adi Lila, chapter 10, verse 85 onwards. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripa tamam vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. तांड्रा मध्य रूप सनातन बड़ा सखा बड़ा शाखा अनुपमा जीवा राजेंद्रादि उपशाखा. Among these branches, Rupa and Sanatan were principal. Anupam, Jeev, Goswami and others headed by Rajendra were their sub-branches. Purport in the Gaura Ganodesha Deepika 195, it is said that Srila Jeev Goswami was formerly Vilas Manjari Gopi. From his very childhood, Jeev Goswami was greatly fond of Srimad Bhagavatam. He later came to Navadvip to study Sanskrit, and following in the footsteps of Sri Nityananda Prabhu, he circumambulated the entire Navadvip Dham. After visiting Navadvip Dham, he went to Benares to study Sanskrit under Madhusudan Vachaspati, and after finishing his studies in Benares, he went to Vrindavan and took shelter of his uncles Sri Rupa and Sanatan. This is described in the Bhakti Ratnakar. As far as our information goes, Srila Jeev Goswami composed and edited at least 25 books. They are all very much celebrated and they are listed as follows: Hari Namamrita Vyakaran, Sutra Malika, Dhatu Sangraha, Krishna Archar Deepika, Gopal Viru Davali, Rasamrita Shesh, Shri Madhav Mahotsav, Shri Sankalpa Kalpavriksha, Bhavartha Suchaka Champu, Gopal Tapani Tika, a commentary on the Brahma Samhita, a commentary on Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, a commentary on Ujjvala Nilamani, a commentary on Yoga Sara Stava, a commentary on the Gayatri Mantra as described in the Agni Puran, a description of Lord's lotus feet derived from the Padma Puran, a description of lotus feet of Srimati Radharani, Gopal Champu in 2 parts, 7 Sandarbhas, the Karma, Tattva, Bhagavad, Paramatma, Krishna, Bhakti and Preeti Sandarbha. After the disappearance of Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami in Vrindavan, Srila Jeev Goswami became the Acharya of all the Vaishnavas in Bengal, Orissa and the rest of the world. And it is he who used to guide them in their devotional service. In Vrindavan, he established the Radha Damodar temple, where after retirement, we had the opportunity to live from 62 until 65. So, as we know, Prabhupada stayed there in the Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan in the 60s, from 62 to 65. When we decided to come to the United States of America, when Jeev Goswami was still present, Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami compiled his famous Chaitanya Charitamrita. Later, Srila Jeev Goswami inspired Srinivas Acharya, Narottam Das Thakur and Dukhi Krishna Das to preach Krishna consciousness in Bengal. Jeev Goswami was informed that all the manuscripts that had been collected from Vrindavan and sent to Bengal for preaching purposes were plundered near Vishnupura in Bengal, but later he received the information that the books had been recovered. Srila Jeev Goswami awarded the designation Kaviraj to Ramchandra Sena, a principal of Srinivas Acharyas, and to Ramchandra's younger brother Govinda. While Jeev Goswami was alive, Srimati Janava Devi, the pleasure potency of Sri Nityananda Prabhu, went to Vrindavan with a few devotees. Jeev Goswami was very kind to the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. The Vaishnavas from Bengal, whoever went to Vrindavan, he provided with residence and prasadam. His disciples Krishnadas Adhikari listed all the books of the Goswamis in his diary. The Sahajya's level 3 accusations against Srila Jeev Goswami. This is certainly not congenial for the execution of devotional service. The first accusation concerns a materialist who was very proud of his reputation as a great Sanskrit scholar and approached Sri Rupa and Sanatan to argue with them about the revealed scriptures. Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, not wanting to waste their time, gave him a written statement that he had defeated them in a debate on the revealed scriptures. Taking this paper, the scholar approached Jiva Goswami for a similar certificate of defeat, but Jiva Goswami did not agree to give him one. On the contrary, he argued with him regarding the scriptures and defeated him. Certainly, it was right for Jiva Goswami to stop such a dishonest scholar from advertising that he had defeated Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, but due to their illiteracy, the Sahajiya class referred to this incident to accuse Srila Jiva Goswami of deviating from the principle of humility. They do not know, however, that humility and meekness are appropriate when one's own honor is insulted, but not when Lord Vishnu or the Acharyas are blasphemed. In such cases, one should not be humble and meek, but must act. One should follow the example given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya says in his Shikshashtaka, Trinad api sunichena taror iva sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya satahari. One can chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking himself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Nevertheless, when the Lord was informed that Nityananda Prabhu was injured by Jagaya and Madhai, he immediately went to the spot, angry like fire, wanting to kill them. Thus Lord Chaitanya has explained his verse by the example of his own behavior. One should tolerate insults against oneself, but when there is blasphemy committed against superiors such as the Vaishnavas, one should be neither humble nor meek. One must take proper steps to counteract such blasphemy. This is the duty of a servant of a Guru and Vaishnavas. Anyone who understands the principle of eternal servitude to the Guru and Vaishnavas will appreciate the action of Sri Jiva Goswami in connection with the so-called scholar's victory over his gurus, Srila Rupa and Srila Sanatan Goswami. Another story fabricated to defame Srila Jiva Goswami states that when Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami showed him the newly completed manuscript of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Jiva Goswami thought it would hamper his reputation as a big scholar and therefore threw it into a well. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was greatly shocked according to this story, and he died immediately. Fortunately, a copy of the manuscript of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita had been kept by a person named Mukunda, and therefore later it was possible to publish the book. This story is another ignominious example of blasphemy against a Guru and Vaishnava. Such a story should never be accepted as authoritative. According to another accusation, Srila Jiva Goswami did not approve of the principles of Parakiya Ras of Rajadham, and therefore supported Swakiya Ras, showing that Radha and Krishna are eternally married. Actually, when Jiva Goswami was alive, some of his followers disliked the Parakiya Ras of the Gopis. Therefore, Srila Jiva Goswami, for their spiritual benefit, supported Swakiya Ras, for he could understand that Sahajiyas would otherwise exploit the Parakiya Ras as they are actually doing at the present time. Unfortunately, in Vrindavan and Navadvip, it has become fashionable among Sahajiyas in their debauchery to find an unmarried sexual partner to live with to execute so-called devotional service in Parakiya Ras. Foreseeing this, Srila Jiva Goswami supported Swakiya Ras, and later all the Vaishnavacharyas also approved of it. Srila Jiva Goswami was never opposed to the transcendental Parakiya Ras, nor has any other Vaishnavas disapproved of it. Srila Jiva Goswami strictly followed his predecessor Gurus and Vaishnavas, Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, and Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami accepted him as one of his instructor gurus. Verse 86. Malira Ichhaya Shakha Bahut Badila Badiya Paschima Desha Sabha Achadila. By the will of the Supreme Gardener, the branches of Srila Rup Goswami and Sanatan Goswami grew many times over, expanding throughout the Western countries and covering the entire region. Verse 87, Asindhu Nadi Tira Ar Himalaya Vrindavan Mathuradi Yata Tirthahaya. Extending to the borders of the river Sindhu and Himalayan mountain valleys, these two branches expanded throughout India, including all the places of pilgrimage such as Vrindavan, Mathura and Haridwar. Verse 88, Dui Shakhara Prema Phale Sakala Bhasila Prema Phala Swade Loka Unumatta Haila. The fruits of love of Godhead which fructified on these two branches were distributed in abundance. Tasting these fruits, everyone became mad after them. Verse 89, Paschimera Loka Saba Mudha Anachar Taha Pracharila Donhe Bhakti Sadachar. Translation: the people in general on the western side of India were neither intelligent nor well behaved, but by the influence of Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, they were trained in devotional service and good behavior. Purport: although it is not only in Western India that people were contaminated by association with Muslims, it is a fact that the farther west one goes in India, the more he will find the people to be fallen from the Vedic culture. Until 5,000 years ago, when the entire planet was under the control of Maharaj Parikshit, the Vedic culture was current everywhere. Gradually, however, people were influenced by non-Vedic culture and they lost sight of how to behave in connection with devotional service. Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami very kindly preached the Bhakti cult in Western India, and following in their footsteps, and the propagators of the Chaitanya cult in the Western countries are spreading this Sankirtan movement and inculcating the principles of Vaishnava behavior, thus purifying and reforming many persons who were previously accustomed to the cultures of Mlechas and Yavanas. All of our devotees in the Western countries give up their old habits of illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating and gambling. Of course, 500 years ago, these practices were unknown in India, at least in Eastern India. But unfortunately, at present, all of the India has been victimized by these non-Vedic principles, which are sometimes even supported by the government. Verse 90, Shasta Drishtye Kaila Lupta Tirthera Udhar Vrindavane Kaila Shrimurti Sevar Prachar. In accordance with the directions of the revealed scriptures, both Goswamis excavated the lost places of pilgrimage and inaugurated the worships of deities in Vrindavan. Purport: the spot where we find now Sri Radha Kund was an agricultural field during the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. A small reservoir of water was there, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bathed in that water and pointed out that originally Radha Kund existed in that location. Following his direction, Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami renovated Radha Kund. This is one of the brilliant examples of how the Goswamis excavated lost places of pilgrimage. Similarly, it is through the endeavor of the Goswamis that all the important temples in Vrindavan were established. Originally, there were 7 important Gaudiya Vaishnava temples established in Vrindavan, namely the Madan Mohan Temple, the Govinda Temple, Gopinath Temple, Sri Radharaman Temple, Radha Shyam Sundar Temple, Radha Damodar Temple, and Gokulananda Temple. Verse 91, Mahaprabhura Priya Bhritya Raghunath Dasa Sarva Tyaji Kaila Prabhura Pada Talevas. Shri Raghunath Das Goswami, the 46th branch of the tree, was one of the most dear servants of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He left all his material possessions to surrender completely unto the Lord and live at his lotus feet. Purport: Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhashya, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami was most probably born in the year 1416 Shakabda, AD 1494, in the Kayasth family as a son of Govardhan Majumdar, who was the younger brother of the then Zamindar Hiranya Majumdar. The village where he took birth is known as Sri Krishnapura on the railway line between Calcutta and Burdwan. Is a station named Trishabagha, known as Adi Saptagram, and about 1.5 miles away is the village of Sri Krishnapura, where the parental home of Sri Raghunath Das Goswami was situated. A temple of Sri Sri Radha Govind is still there. In front of the temple is a large open area, but no large hall for devotees to assemble. A rich Calcutta gentleman named Haricharan Ghosh, who resided in the Shimla quarter, recently repaired the temple. The entire temple compound is surrounded by walls, and in a small room just to the side of the temple is a small platform on which Raghunath Das Goswami used to worship the deity. By the side of the temple is a dying river, Saraswati. The forefathers of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami were all Vaishnavas and were very rich. His spiritual master at home was Yadunandan Acharya. Although Raghunath Das was a family man, he had no attachment for his estate and his wife. Seeing his tendency to leave home, his father and uncle engaged special bodyguards to watch over him, but nevertheless he managed to escape their vigilance and went away to Jagannath Puri to meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This incident took place in the year 1439 Shakabda, AD 1517. Raghunath Das Goswami compiled 3 books named Stvamala or Stvavali, Dana Charita and Mukta Charita. He lived a long time, residing for most of his life at Radhakund. The place where Raghunath Das Goswami performed his devotional service still exists by Radhakund. He almost completely gave up eating, and therefore he was very skinny and of weak health. His only concern was to chant the holy name of Lord. He gradually reduced his sleeping until he was almost not sleeping at all. It is said that his eyes were always full of tears. When Srinivas Acharya went to see Raghunath Das Goswami, the Goswami blessed him by embracing him. Srinivas Acharya requested his blessings for preaching in Bengal, and Sri Raghunath Das Goswami granted them. In the Gaura Ganodesha Deepika 186, it is stated that Srila Raghunath Das Goswami was formerly the gopi named Rasa Manjari. Sometimes it is said that he was Rati Manjari. Verse 92. Prabhu Samarpila Tanare Swarupera Hate Prabhura Gupta Seva Kaila Swarupera Sathe. When Raghunath Das Goswami approached Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Jagannath Puri, the Lord entrusted him to the care of Swarup Damodar, his secretary. Thus they both engaged in the confidential service of the Lord. Purport: the confidential service was the personal care of the Lord. Swarupa Damodar, acting as his secretary, attended to the Lord's baths, meals, rest and massages, and Raghunath Das Goswami assisted him. In effect, Raghunath Das Goswami acted as the assistant secretary of the Lord. Verse 93. Shodasha Vatsara Kaila Antaranga Sevana Swarupera Antardhane Aila Vrindavana. He rendered confidential service to the Lord for 16 years at Jagannath Puri, and after the disappearance of both the Lord and Swarup Damodar, he left Jagannath Puri and went to Vrindavan. Verse 94. Vrindavane dui bhaira charan dekhiya Govardhane tyajiba deha brigupat kariya. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami intended to go to Vrindavan to see the lotus feet of Rupa and Sanatan, and then give up his life by jumping from Govardhan Hill. Purport: jumping from the top of Govardhan Hill is a system of suicide especially performed by saintly persons. After the disappearance of Lord Chaitanya and Swarup Damodar, Raghunath Das Goswami keenly felt separation from these two exalted personalities. and therefore decided to give up his life by jumping from Govardhan Hill in Vrindavan. Before doing so, however, he wanted to see the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami. Verse 95. Aita Nishchay Kari Aila Vrindavane Asi Rupa Sanatanaya Bandila Charane. Thus Srila Raghunath Das Goswami came to Vrindavan, visited Sri Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami and offered them his obeisances. Verse 96. Tabe dui bhai tanre marite na dila nij tritiya bhai kari nikate rakhila. These two brothers, however, did not allow him to die. They accepted him as the third brother and kept him in their company. Verse 97. Maha Prabhura lila yata bahira antara dui bhai tanra mukhe shune nirantara. Because Raghunath Das Goswami was an assistant to Swarupa Damodar, he knew much about the external and internal features of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Thus the two brothers Rupa and Sanatan always used to hear of this from him. Verse 98. Anna jala tyaga kaila anya kathana phala dui tina matha karena bhakshana. Raghunath Das Goswami gradually gave up all food and drink but a few drops of buttermilk. Verse 99. Sahasra dandavat kare lay lakshanam dui sahasra vaishnavere nitya pranam. As a daily duty, he regularly offered 1,000 obeisances to the Lord, chanted at least 100,000 holy names, and offered obeisances to 2,000 Vaishnavas. Verse 100. Ratri dine Radha Krishnera Manasa Sevana Prahareka Mahaprabhura Charitra Kathana. Day and night he rendered service within his mind to Radha Krishna, and for 3 hours a day he discoursed about the character of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Purport. We have many things to learn about bhajan or worship of the Lord by following in the footsteps of Raghunath Das Goswami. All the Goswamis engaged in such transcendental activities as described by Srinivas Acharya in his poem about them, Krishnot Kirtana Gana Nartan Parau Prema Mritambho Nidhi. Following in the footsteps of Raghunath Das Goswami, Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, one has to execute devotional service very strictly, specifically by chanting the holy name of the Lord. Verse 101. Tina Sandhya Radha Kunde Apatita Snana Vrajavasi Vaishnave Kare Alingana Mana. Shri Raghunath Das Goswami took 3 baths daily in the Radhakund lake. As soon as he found Vaishnava residing in Vrindavan, he would embrace him and give him all respect. Verse 102. Sardha Sapta Prahara Kare Bhaktira Sadhane Chari Danda Nidra Seha Nahe Kona Dine. He engaged himself in devotional service for more than 22.5 hours a day, and for less than 2 hours he slept, although on some days that was also not possible. Verse 103. Tanara Sadhana Riti Sushunite Chamatkar Sai Rupa Raghunath Prabhu Ye Amar. I'm struck with wonder when I hear about the devotional service he executed. I accept Srila Rupa Goswami and Raghunath Das Goswami as my guides. Purpose. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami accepted Raghunath Das Goswami as his special guide. Therefore, at the end of every chapter, he says, Shri Raghunath Pade Yara Asha Chaitanya Charitamrita Kahe Krishnadasa. Sometimes it is misunderstood that by using the word Raghunath, he wanted to offer his respectful obeisances to Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, for it is sometimes stated that Raghunath Bhatta Goswami was his initiating spiritual master. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur does not approve of this statement. He does not accept Raghunath Bhatta Goswami as the spiritual master of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Verse 104. Inha Sabara या इच्छे हैला प्रभुरा मिलन आगे विस्तारिया ताहा करिबा वर्णन. I shall later explain very elaborately how all these devotees met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we'll continue from verse 105 next time. Thank you for joining, and I wish you all a very happy Janmashtami for tomorrow. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.